The airport buzzed with noise, rolling suitcases, chatter, and the occasional announcement over the loudspeaker. A woman stood near the check-in counter, her posture calm but her eyes sharp. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, her hair neatly styled. Anyone passing by might not have given her a second glance, but there was something quietly powerful about her presence. She handed over her ticket to the airline staff, a polite smile on her face. The agent, a young man with a bored expression, barely looked up as he scanned her boarding pass. Then his fingers paused. He frowned at the screen, then back at her. "Ma'am, there must be a mistake," he said, his tone clipped. She raised an eyebrow. "Oh? This says first class," he said, as if the idea itself was ridiculous. She didn't react, only tilting her head slightly. "Yes, it does." The agent exhaled sharply, like he was dealing with a stubborn child. "First class is fully booked. You'll have to take an economy seat." A few people nearby glanced over, sensing tension. The woman didn't raise her voice, but her words were firm. "I paid for first class. I have the confirmation right here." She pulled out her phone, showing the email receipt. The agent barely glanced at it. "System must have double booked. Nothing we can do." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. Then I'd like to speak to your supervisor." The agent rolled his eyes but picked up the phone. A minute later, a woman in a stiff airline blazer approached, her smile practiced but cold. "How can I help?" The passenger repeated her issue. The supervisor listened, then gave the same response: first class was full, no upgrades, no exceptions. The woman didn't argue. She simply said, "I see." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the counter. The supervisor picked it up, her expression shifting from indifference to confusion, then to something close to panic. She swallowed hard. The passenger leaned in slightly, her voice low but clear. "Now. Let's try this again." The supervisor's hands trembled as she stared at the business card. The young agent beside her frowned, trying to catch a glimpse, but she quickly tucked it into her pocket. Her entire demeanor shifted. Suddenly, she was overly polite, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. "Ma'am, my deepest apologies for the misunderstanding. Let me check the system one more time." The passenger watched in silence as the supervisor's fingers flew across the keyboard. The screen flickered, and after a few tense seconds, the woman's face went pale. She swallowed hard before forcing a smile. "It seems there's been an oversight on our part. A first-class seat has just become available." The young agent's jaw dropped. "But you said..." The supervisor cut him off with a sharp glare. "Please escort our guest to the first-class lounge immediately. Complimentary refreshments while she waits for boarding." The passenger gave a small, knowing nod. "Thank you." As she walked away, the young agent grabbed the supervisor's arm. "What the hell just happened? Who is she?" The supervisor wiped her forehead, her voice barely above a whisper. That woman could shut down this entire airline with one phone call. Inside the first-class lounge. The lounge was quiet, filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. The passenger took a seat near the window, her posture relaxed but her mind sharp. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message, her fingers moving swiftly. A few feet away, a well-dressed businessman glanced at her, then froze. His eyes widened in recognition. He hesitated before cautiously approaching. "Excuse me, are you?" She looked up, her expression unreadable. The man quickly cleared his throat. "Never mind. My apologies for disturbing you." He backed away, nearly knocking over a server carrying a tray of champagne. Meanwhile, near the entrance, airline employees huddled together in hushed panic. A senior manager in a crisp suit rushed in, his face flushed. He spotted the passenger and immediately straightened his tie before approaching. "Ma'am," he said, bowing slightly, "on behalf of the airline, I want to personally apologize for the earlier miscommunication. Is there anything else we can do to ensure your comfort before your flight?" She took a slow sip of her tea before answering. "Just the seat I paid for will be fine." The manager nodded vigorously. "Of course. And please, allow us to upgrade your return flight as well, complimentary, of course." She arched an eyebrow. "That won't be necessary." Boarding time. When boarding was announced, the passenger was the first to be escorted onto the plane. The flight attendants, now fully aware of who she was, greeted her with nervous smiles. "Welcome aboard, ma'am. Your seat is right this way." As she settled into the spacious first-class pod, the other passengers glanced curiously in her direction. A few whispered among themselves, sensing that something unusual was happening. Then, just before takeoff, the captain himself stepped out of the cockpit. He approached her seat, standing stiffly. "Ma'am, I was just informed of the incident at check-in. Rest assured, we take such matters very seriously. The staff involved will be dealt with immediately." She looked up from her book. "That's between you and your employees. I just want a peaceful flight." The captain nodded quickly. "Absolutely. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask." As he retreated, the woman sighed, shaking her head slightly. She had hoped to travel quietly, without fuss. But sometimes, the world refused to let her stay invisible. The plane soared through the clouds, but the tension in first class was thicker than the atmosphere outside. The passenger sat calmly by the window, flipping through a magazine as if nothing unusual had happened. But around her, the flight crew moved like nervous shadows, offering extra blankets, refilling her drink before she could ask, even presenting a gourmet meal they usually reserved for VIPs. A curious businessman across the aisle couldn't take his eyes off her. He leaned toward his assistant and whispered, "That's not just some random passenger. Did you see how the captain came out to apologize to her?" The assistant shrugged. "Maybe she's a celebrity?" "No," the businessman muttered. "Celebrities get special treatment, but they don't make airline staff look like they're about to lose their jobs." The truth begins to leak. Back in the galley, two flight attendants huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. "Did you hear what the supervisor said before takeoff?" the first attendant whispered. "They tried to downgrade her to economy because they didn't believe a black woman could afford first class." The second attendant's eyes widened. "Oh my God. And then what?" "Then she showed them who she was, and suddenly, the airline's bending over backwards to fix it." A third attendant, overhearing, pulled out her phone and discreetly snapped a photo of the passenger. She typed a quick search, her breath catching when the results loaded. "Guys," she hissed. "You're not gonna believe this. A phone call that changes everything." Mid-flight, the senior manager from the airline's corporate office was pacing in his home, phone pressed to his ear. On the other end, the airport supervisor's voice trembled. "Sir, I swear, we had no idea who she was. She didn't look, she wasn't dressed like someone important." The manager gritted his teeth. "That's the problem. You judged her based on looks instead of checking the system properly. Do you realize who you just insulted?" A long silence. Then, weakly, "No. That woman is the founder of the largest black-owned travel agency in the country. She books millions in flights every year. And worse, she's the daughter of a civil rights legend who sued airlines for discrimination back in the 70s. The supervisor's blood ran cold. "Oh no. Oh yes," the manager snapped. "And guess what? She just tweeted about this. It's going viral." The power of silence. Back on the plane, the passenger hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't demanded compensation or made a scene. She simply existed in her rightful seat, radiating quiet authority. But her phone buzzed constantly, messages from journalists, fellow activists, even the airline's PR team begging to make things right. She ignored them all. A flight attendant approached cautiously. "Ma'am, the captain asked me to tell you, the airline's CEO would like to speak with you personally when we land." She didn't look up from her book. "Tell him I'll consider it, after I post my full review of this experience online." The attendant gulped and retreated. Landing in chaos. As the plane touched down, the airline's worst fears came true. News vans were already parked on the tarmac. Social media had exploded with the story, and #airline discrimination was trending. The passenger gathered her things, her face unreadable. The businessman from earlier finally worked up the courage to speak to her. "Excuse me. I just want to say, what they did was unacceptable. But the way you handled it? Brilliant." For the first time, she smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. The best revenge isn't anger. It's letting them realize exactly how badly they messed up. As she stepped off the plane, a team of nervous executives waited, their apologies rehearsed. But she walked right past them, toward the flashing cameras, and her chance to turn one airline's mistake into a national conversation. The airport terminal buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with travel. Reporters clustered near the gate, cameras poised, while airline executives huddled off to the side, their faces tight with barely concealed panic. The moment the passenger stepped into view, a flurry of flashes erupted. A journalist shoved a microphone forward. "Ma'am, can you confirm you were denied your first-class seat due to racial profiling?" She didn't break stride. "I think the airline's own employees have already confirmed that." A PR rep rushed to intercept her. "Ms. We'd love to discuss this privately. The CEO is waiting in our VIP lounge." She sidestepped him smoothly. "I'm sure he is. But right now, I have a press conference to attend." The rep blanched. A what? We weren't informed." "Exactly," she said, and kept walking. The CEO's desperate play. In the airline's corporate lounge, the CEO paced like a caged animal. His assistant scurried in, phone in hand. "Sir, it's worse than we thought. Her team just released the security footage from check-in. It's everywhere." The CEO grabbed the phone. On screen, the young agent's dismissive sneer was crystal clear: "First class is fully booked. You'll have to take an economy seat." The video cut to the exact moment the supervisor saw the business card, the blood draining from her face. The clip ended with text, "This isn't about a seat. It's about respect." The CEO groaned. "Call legal. We need to draft an apology now, before she sues us into oblivion." The power of the people. Outside the airport, a crowd had gathered, some curious travelers, others local activists holding signs. "Racism doesn't fly," one read. The passenger stepped up to a makeshift podium, and the crowd fell silent. She didn't need notes. 40 years ago, she began, my father had to sue an airline for refusing him service. Today, I was told I didn't belong in first class. Some things change. Some things don't. She held up her boarding pass. This isn't just my ticket. It's proof that no matter how much money you have, how many degrees you earn, some people will always see color first. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A teenager recording on her phone whispered, she's destroying them, and she's not even yelling. The airline's hollow apology. Back in the lounge, the CEO watched the live stream with mounting horror. She's turning this into a movement, he muttered. His PR head thrust a tablet at him. Our stock just dropped 8%. Sponsors are pulling ads. We have to respond now. Minutes later, the airline's official Twitter posted, we deeply regret the unacceptable incident and are investigating. Discrimination has no place in our company. The replies were instant and brutal. Investigating? We saw the video. Fire the employees. Then fire whoever trained them to think this was okay. Too late. I'm never flying with you again. The passenger, still at the podium, was handed a phone with the tweet. She read it aloud to the crowd, then laughed. Investigating. They need an investigation to understand why racism is wrong? The crowd roared. A private conversation. As the event wound down, a limo pulled up discreetly. The airline's chairman, an elderly man rarely seen in public, stepped out. He approached the passenger, hat in hand. May I speak with you? Just 5 minutes. The crowd held its breath. She studied him, then nodded. They stepped aside. The chairman spoke quietly. My father founded this airline to connect people. What happened today, it shames me. He took a deep breath. Name what you want. A settlement. A diversity initiative. Anything. She crossed her arms. I don't want your money. I want every employee, from pilots to baggage handlers, to undergo real anti-bias training. Not some online checkbox. Real change. He nodded slowly. Done. Anne. I'd like you to lead it. Now it was her turn to pause. The camera zoomed in, capturing the moment the predator became the partner. The aftermath begins. By nightfall, the airline had fired the check-in agent and suspended the supervisor. Announced a partnership with the passengers' civil rights organization. Pledged to review all customer discrimination complaints from the past decade. On CNN, a commentator summed it up, today wasn't just a win for one woman. It was a wake-up call for corporate America. Meanwhile, the passenger sat in her hotel room, scrolling through thousands of supportive messages. One stood out, a DM from the young flight attendant who'd snapped her photo earlier. I quit today. I won't work for people like that. Thank you for showing me my voice matters. She smiled and began typing her next move. The morning after the press conference, the passenger sat in her hotel's restaurant, scrolling through news headlines on her tablet. Every major outlet had picked up the story, but the tone wasn't entirely what she expected. Airline in freefall after discrimination scandal. Activist forces corporate giant to its knees. Is this the end of airline racism, or just the start? A shadow fell across her table. She looked up to see a sharply dressed woman with a tight smile. Mind if I join you? Without waiting for an answer, the woman slid into the seat opposite her. I'm with Global Traveler magazine. We'd love an exclusive interview about. No, the passenger said, turning a page on her tablet. The reporter blinked. You haven't even heard our offer. Don't need to. I'm not here for clout. Undeterred, the reporter leaned in. People are calling you a hero. Don't you want to tell your side? The passenger finally met her gaze. My side is simple, pay for what you bought. Treat people right. If that's heroic, we've set the bar too low. The reporter opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing no soundbite was coming. She left without another word. The backlash begins. Online, the narrative was splitting. While most supported the passenger, darker corners of the internet erupted with venom. She played the race card for a free upgrade. If she's so rich, why's she making a big deal over a seat? This is why I hate flying nowadays, everyone's looking for a payout. Even worse, some airline employees pushed back anonymously on forums. That supervisor was forced to apologize. The passenger probably threatened her job. First class is always overbooked. She's acting like this was personal. The passenger read these comments with a detached calm. She'd seen this playbook before: when you win, they attack your character. When they can't attack facts, they invent motives. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother: "You seeing this trash online? Want me to handle it?" She typed back, "No. Let them talk. Truth doesn't need defenders." A surprising ally. At the airline's headquarters, low-level employees whispered in the break room. "Did you hear? The chairman personally called her last night," a young intern said. An older mechanic scoffed. "Damage control. They don't care about racism, they care about stock prices." But then a flight attendant spoke up, the same one who'd quit the day before. "I worked that flight. That woman never raised her voice, never demanded anything. All she did was exist in a space they didn't think she belonged in. And that scared them more than any lawsuit." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, heads nodded. The CEO's secret meeting. Behind closed doors, the airline's CEO met with their legal team. "We have to contain this," the CEO hissed. "Our Q3 projections are tanking." The head lawyer slid a document across the table. "Her nonprofit's financials. If we dig deep enough, maybe we find." "No," the chairman interrupted from the doorway. Everyone froze. He entered slowly, leaning on his cane. "I just got off the phone with the Department of Transportation. They're thrilled we're voluntarily reviewing past complaints." "Know why?" "Because it means they don't have to investigate us themselves." The lawyers exchanged glances. The chairman tapped his cane for emphasis. "This ends now. We comply fully. No dirty tricks. Or I resign, and take half the board with me." The CEO's face turned ashen. The passenger's next move. That afternoon, the passenger received an email marked urgent: settlement offer. She almost deleted it, until she saw the sender. Not the airline. The Department of Justice. She opened it, eyebrows rising as she read. The DOJ wanted her input on new federal guidelines for airline discrimination policies. Not as a victim. As an expert. Her phone rang immediately. It was the chairman. "I assume you've seen the news?" he asked. She smiled for the first time all day. "Which part? The DOJ request? Or your board firing the CEO this morning?" A pause. Then the chairman chuckled. "You're good. I'll give you that." "No," she corrected. "I'm right. And that's scarier. The court of public opinion." By evening, the tide had turned again. Prominent civil rights leaders praised her restraint. Late-night hosts mocked the airline's hypocrisy. And crucially, other passengers began sharing their own stories of mid-flight discrimination with the hashtag #NotJustASeat. The passenger reposted a few, adding simply, "This was never about me. Keep talking." In a downtown bar, the fired check-in agent drank alone, glaring at the TV where pundits debated his fate. The bartender slid him another beer. "Rough day?" The agent muttered into his drink. "I just did what I was trained to do." The bartender, a black woman, paused mid-pour. "Funny. That's what she said too." The passenger stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her hotel suite, watching the city lights flicker below. Her phone buzzed non-stop, congratulations from colleagues, interview requests, even a message from an old law school professor offering to connect her with the White House. She silenced it all. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, she recognized the airline's newly appointed interim CEO, a woman in her 50s with a sharp bob and an even sharper reputation. The passenger hesitated, then opened the door. "I know this is unorthodox," the CEO said, holding up a bottle of champagne. "But I wanted to deliver this personally. And to talk." No PR teams. No lawyers. The passenger studied her for a long moment before stepping aside. 5 minutes. The offer. The CEO set the champagne on the table, untouched, and got straight to the point. We're creating a chief equity officer position. I want you to fill it. The passenger almost laughed. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. Full autonomy. Direct report to the board. 7-figure salary plus stock options. The CEO leaned forward. You've spent your career fighting the system from the outside. Imagine what you could do from inside. The passenger walked to the window, considering. It was a smart play, hire your biggest critic to silence them. But also, an opportunity. She turned back. Let me guess, I'd also have to sign an NDA about this whole incident. The CEO's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, the passenger said, opening the door. Tell your board their apology needs work. The leak. 2 hours later, an anonymous Twitter account with 12 followers posted. Airline offered activist millions to shut up. She said no. Attached was an audio clip, clearly recorded from inside the hotel room, of the CEO's offer. The internet exploded. The airline's PR team scrambled, but it was too late. The hashtag not for sale started trending alongside screenshots of the passenger's decades-long activism work. Meanwhile, the interim CEO's face appeared on every news channel, her earlier confident demeanor replaced with tight-lipped damage control. We remain committed to meaningful change. A tech analyst on CNN cut in, you don't offer meaningful change in exchange for silence. That's called hush money. The whistleblower. Back at airline headquarters, a junior data analyst sat frozen at her desk, watching the chaos unfold. On her screen was an open folder labeled Customer Complaints, Discrimination Cases. She'd found something worse than one racist employee. She'd found a pattern. Dozens of reports, black passengers randomly selected for extra screening, Muslim travelers removed from flights for suspicious behavior, Latino families barred from boarding despite valid tickets, all quietly settled with NDAs. Her hand hovered over the send button, an encrypted file addressed to 3 major news outlets and the passenger's nonprofit. Her boss's voice echoed in her head, "You'll never work in this industry again." She took a deep breath. Clicked. The passenger's choice. The passenger was packing her bag when the documents hit her inbox. She scanned them quickly, her stomach tightening. This went far beyond her single incident. Her phone rang, the chairman again. "Before you say anything," he began, voice weary, "we had no idea the scope." "Bullshit," she cut in. "You built a business model on discrimination then acted shocked when it bit you." A long silence. Then, quietly, "What do you want from us?" She looked at the documents again. At the faces of hundreds of silenced passengers. "Nothing," she said finally. "I want nothing from you anymore." The press conference heard round the world. The next morning, instead of attending the airline's hastily called Diversity Summit, the passenger stood before a different crowd, families from the leaked documents, civil rights leaders, and a sea of cameras. "This was never about one seat," she said, voice steady. "It was about every passenger told they don't belong. Today, we file a class action lawsuit, not for money, but to ban discriminatory NDAs in the travel industry." Behind her, a screen displayed the hashtag See Us Now. As she stepped away, the first plaintiff took the microphone, a grandmother who'd been barred from a flight for wearing a hijab. "They paid me $10,000 to stay quiet," she said, tears in her eyes. "But my dignity isn't for sale." The fallout. By day's end, the airline stock plummeted 15%. Congress announced hearings on airline discrimination. 3 major corporations severed travel contracts with the airline. In a quiet corner of the airport, the young data analyst who'd leaked the documents boarded a flight to her hometown, a severance check in her bag. Her phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. "When you're ready, we have a job for you." She smiled for the first time in weeks. The morning after the class action announcement, the passenger walked into her nonprofit's office to find her entire staff gathered, clapping. A banner hung across the room, "Change Maker." She raised an eyebrow. "Who organized this?" Her assistant grinned. Spontaneous combustion of respect. But the celebration was cut short when her lawyer rushed in, face grim. "You need to see this." On his laptop, a legal blog displayed a freshly filed document. Airline vs. Passengers Nonprofit, motion to dismiss under abuse of process claim. The passenger skimmed the text, her jaw tightening. The airline was countersuing, accusing her of orchestrating the entire incident for financial gain. "They're claiming we planted the whistleblower," the lawyer said. "And they're demanding access to all our donor records to prove it's a shakedown." She closed the laptop with a snap. "They're desperate." Her assistant bit her lip. "But will it work?" "Not in court," the passenger said. "But in the media? They just turned me from victim to villain." The smear campaign begins. Within hours, exclusive reports popped up on fringe news sites. Activists' nonprofit received millions from airline competitors. Secret ties between whistleblower and lawsuit revealed. None of it was true, but the headlines spread like wildfire. Even mainstream outlets began adding, amid allegations of, to their coverage. The passenger's brother called, furious. "They're digging up your old tax returns. We need to." "No," she cut in. "We don't play their game." But privately, she scrolled through the comments on news articles. Knew she was a fraud. "This is why I don't trust social justice warriors." Her hands shook, not from fear, but rage. They wanted her angry. They wanted her to slip up. She took a deep breath and drafted a single tweet. "Truth doesn't fear scrutiny. Release all my emails, financials, and donor lists publicly. Hashtag full transparency." The internet went silent for a full minute, then erupted. The chairman's regret. In the airline's boardroom, the interim CEO high-fived her legal team. "We've got her on the defensive now." But the chairman stared out the window, silent. "Sir," the CEO prompted. He turned slowly. "You realize we just accused an internationally respected civil rights leader of fraud, with zero evidence?" The room shifted uncomfortably. The CEO waved a hand. "It's standard legal strategy." "It's stupid," the chairman snapped. "We look guilty and petty." He tossed his pen on the table. "I'm calling an emergency shareholder meeting." As he left, the lawyers exchanged glances. One whispered, "He's going to fire her." The unexpected ally. That evening, the passenger received a call from an unknown number. "Ms. Passenger? This is Evelyn Cho, president of Skylink Airlines. We've never met, but we'd like to help." The passenger frowned. Skylink was the airline's biggest competitor. "If this is about poaching me for your diversity team." "No," Cho interrupted. "This is about evidence. We've been documenting their discrimination practices for years, for our own lawsuit. We're prepared to testify in your case." A pause. Then Cho added quietly, "Not for PR. Because what they did to you? They did to our flight crew too." The passenger exhaled. "Send the files. The leak that changes everything." At 3 a.m., an encrypted Twitter account dropped a bombshell. Airline secret, profile and deny policy, full memo. Attached was an internal document instructing staff to discreetly reseat passengers who may make others uncomfortable. Flag cultural attire as potential security concerns. Settle complaints quickly with non-disclosure agreements as standard. The memo ended with the interim CEO's signature, dated 6 months before the passenger's incident. News outlets that had been skeptical hours ago now scrambled to report the leak. The airline's PR team sent frantic emails, "The document is being mischaracterized." But it was too late. The hashtag #ProfileAndI was already trending globally. The passenger's power move. At dawn, the passenger held an impromptu live stream from her office. No makeup, no script, just raw fury. "They sued me for fraud." Then this surfaces. She held up the memo. "Tell me again who's lying?" She leaned closer to the camera. "But here's what they really fear, not this lawsuit, but every passenger who'll now come forward. So let's make it simple." She ripped the memo in half. "No more secrets. No more NDAs. If you've experienced this, speak. They can't silence us all." Within minutes, the airline's customer service lines were flooded with calls. Flight attendants at hubs worldwide staged impromptu walkouts. And in a stunning move, the airline's own general counsel resigned, with a public letter condemning the toxic culture of denial. The board's nuclear option. As markets opened, the airline stock plunged 30%. The chairman convened an emergency call with major investors, who delivered an ultimatum. "Clean house by noon, or we pull funding." At 11:58 a.m., a terse press release went out. The interim CEO and entire legal team have resigned effective immediately. All litigation against passenger is withdrawn. But the passenger wasn't celebrating. She sat with the whistleblower and the leaked documents, compiling a list of every victim named in the files. "They think resignations end this," she muttered. "We're just getting started." The federal courthouse steps were packed, reporters, activists, airline employees, and curious onlookers all jostling for space. The passenger walked through the crowd slowly, ignoring shouted questions, her face unreadable behind dark sunglasses. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. The airline's new legal team, hired just 48 hours earlier, whispered urgently. Their client had instructed them to settle at any cost. But when they'd offered the passenger $50 million the night before, she'd hung up on them. The judge entered. Everyone rose. "This class action alleges systemic discrimination spanning a decade," the judge began, adjusting his glasses. "Before we proceed, I'd like to hear from both sides directly. No lawyers. Just truth." A murmur swept through the room. The chairman stood first, his hands shaking slightly. "Your Honor, we failed. Not just one employee, but as an institution. We're prepared to." The judge held up a hand. "I didn't ask for apologies. I asked for truth." The chairman sat down hard. Then the passenger stood. The speech that silenced a courtroom. She didn't face the judge. She turned to the airline's board members sitting in the front row. "6 weeks ago, I just wanted the seat I paid for," she said, her voice quiet but carrying. "Then you offered me money. Then a job. Then you sued me. Now you're here, ready to change." She removed her sunglasses. But real change isn't a press release. It's not diversity trainings or a review of policies. It's looking at the mirror and admitting, you didn't accidentally discriminate. You built a business model on it. A flight attendant in the gallery began crying silently. The passenger pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "This is a list of 217 people your NDAs silenced. People who lost wages, missed funerals, were humiliated in front of their children. You think a settlement erases that?" The judge leaned forward. "What would erase it, in your view?" She met his gaze. "Nothing can. But here's where we start. The 3 demands. She placed the paper on the bench. 1. Every NDA you've ever used to silence discrimination complaints. Nullified. Public database of every incident, names redacted, but stories told. The airline's lawyers stiffened. That would open them to countless lawsuits. 2. A binding commitment, 20% of your executive team must come from marginalized groups within 2 years. Not advisors. Decision makers. The chairman's eyes widened. That would require firing half his board. 3. She turned to the crying flight attendant. An independent council of employees and passengers to oversee complaints. No more HR cover-ups. The judge steepled his fingers. And if they refuse? Then we take this to trial. And I subpoena every email, every memo, every cultural sensitivity training that taught staff to profile passengers. The airline's lead attorney stood abruptly. Your Honor, we'd like to recess to. Denied, the judge said. Chairman? Your answer. Every phone in the room was recording. Every eye was watching. The chairman stood slowly. We accept. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. The aftermath. Outside, the passenger was mobbed by reporters. She ignored them, walking straight to the flight attendant who'd cried during her speech. You okay? She asked quietly. The woman wiped her eyes. I've worked there 15 years. I reported things, but they always said, it's just one bad apple. The passenger squeezed her hand. Now we burn the orchard. As she turned to leave, the chairman approached hesitantly. For what it's worth. I am sorry. She studied him, the tired eyes, the stooped posture of a man who'd just lost a war. Don't be sorry, she said. Be better. Then she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. 1 year later. The headlines told the story. Airline's first open discrimination report reveals 200+ incidents. Whistleblower who leaked docs named VP of Equity. Passenger who started it all declines board seat, my work's done. At an airport cafe, the passenger sipped coffee, watching planes take off. Her phone buzzed, a text from the flight attendant, now leading the employee council. They just fired 3 managers for ignoring complaints. It's working. She smiled and typed back, told you we would. As her flight boarded, the gate agent recognized her and grinned. First class is ready when you are. This time, no one batted an eye.